Chapter 27. You were talking about not being able to sneak in on Oberon, Jack replied softly. Right, so I was. Eleanor's eye held an intoxicated glaze to them. That was the mission, but unlike the idiots on the council, no offense, John, our group knew better. Unlike all of them, we hadn't forgotten who our enemy was. So we came up with an alternate plan of sorts. It wasn't really any better than the one they had come up with, but we at least liked it more. We felt it had a higher chance of success, if not our survival. That was never a real option. We all understood that by then. The council had lied to everyone for one reason or another when they brought them there. This was nothing but a suicide mission from the start. One with little chance of ever succeeding. But you pulled it off, Penny whispered, standing to give her mother a hug. Thanks, sweetie, and yes, we pulled it off. By a minor miracle, and my parents' intervention with a forbidden spell. A few of us managed to get inside and find Oberon. You mentioned the spell before the other night, Jack said. What was it? John looked at his wife and daughter, and then at Eleanor. It's a power transference spell. Think of it as something similar to a permanent bloodline version of what you can do, except with some added benefits and caveats. It enhances your elemental affinities, taking them from the donors and grafting them onto the receiver. In this case, the donors were her parents and the receiver was your mother. Kaitlyn, who had already figured out which spell had been used early, just sat there quietly. For Jack and Penelope, however, the news was a bit of a shock. How can a spell like that exist? It would be so easy to abuse it. Jack shook his head. No, forget about that for the moment. How did they manage to get the spell to work without her there? I would assume something like that requires the participants to be right in front of each other. It does, and we don't know, Eleanor replied, gazing deeply into her glass of wine. Jack winced. He had forgotten they were talking about her parents. Sorry, Mom. It's fine. It happened a long time ago. Besides, you're right, the spell is easily abused. That's why it's forbidden. It can only be used among blood relatives who aren't on their deathbed. There are also a few other restrictions, along with the receiver needing to be there. Eleanor reached for her glass. Jason stopped her and shook his head. He kissed her fingers before bringing her hand to his lap. With a sigh, she continued. My parents were brilliant spell researchers, and they must have come up with a way around the need to have me there. All I know is we had just gotten captured and were about to be turned into dinner when I felt it happen. The sudden shift in my affinities, the change in my overall power. It was exactly what we needed to escape, and I knew what it meant. I went a little insane at the time. The table was quiet as Eleanor collected herself. Remembered tears from her parents' sacrifice trickling freely down her cheeks. When I came to a while later, everything had been frozen. My remaining companions were gone. They had somehow managed to escape in time, but everything inside the base was dead. It took me a while, but I managed to find the ice sculpture that was Oberon and break him into 1,000 pieces. I brought back his head and pendant as proof. Then I went to bury my parents before going back to school for a few days. No one but you knows what they did, and I never saw anyone from the team again. Jason hugged his wife as she finished her emotional tale. Jack let his mother mourn in peace for a minute before speaking up. That means that the people on the council confirmed his identity and his death. Are there spells to bring people back from the dead or to let you escape death? No, nothing that I've ever heard of anyway, Chantel said emphatically. Not even the darkest spells they mentioned in college had that sort of ability. I've never even heard so much as a whisper of one anywhere else either. John nodded silently and glanced at Eleanor. It's obvious you've done more research into spells and their construction over the years than either of us. What do you think? Is it possible? Eleanor sniffled and grabbed a napkin from the table, wiping at her red eyes and then her nose. I'm hesitant to say it's impossible, but I've never come across a spell or anything that even mentioned it as a possibility. At the very least, the cost to perform such a spell would have been enormous. What are we thinking, then? A clone, doppelganger, some kind of shapeshifter that has his memories? A son? Kaitlyn rattled off a few options quickly. A son or daughter would be the most likely, Eleanor replied slowly with a shiver. Though I pity the poor woman who bore him a child. The problem with that particular solution, however, is we need to assume that either this new Oberon is on the council, or he has someone who is. John cursed and leaned back in his chair, his head flopping back with a groan. She's right, that's the only way they could have learned who killed her there. Whatever, father. Even Chantal and I had no idea what Eleanor had done. She never said. If we as children of council members had no clue, then no one else would either. You did say that a lot of the old council was being pushed out for younger members. Jack pointed out. That they have, and knowing what we know now, I would say the timing is even somewhat suspicious. Chantal let out her own groan. Great, now we're suspicious of 2/3 of the council. I was so excited when some of the old fossils were replaced too. A ringtone blaring an ominous death march suddenly startled everyone. Eleanor reached into her pocket with a slightly trembling hand. Speak of the devil. The council is calling me. She held a finger up to her lips and then accepted the call. Hello? Everyone in the room could hear some distant yelling from the tiny speaker. Eleanor, meanwhile, was distinctly unimpressed with them and was barely listening. Yes, I did indeed take some territory from those whimpering fools. She rolled her eyes and pulled the phone away from her ear. If you're not even going to ask why I did it, then this phone call is over. She ended the call and placed the phone on the table. Was that smart? John asked. She took a second to respond, her eyes never leaving the phone. Probably not, but as a baron, I have a specific contact within the council who contacts me. All communication goes through her. She's a right git, and I hate her guts, but she has never missed an opportunity to remind me that she has power over me. That wasn't her on the other end just now. In fact, I haven't heard from her in a while. If she was replaced, I would have assumed she would have called to introduce her replacement. She never did. Chantal finished for her. No, she didn't. Regardless, the idiot on the other end didn't seem interested in what actually happened, only in assigning blame. Well, we all knew you taking that land from them would cause trouble. I'm a little tempted to grab even more just to really piss them off now. Eleanor leaned against her husband. I think that would be a bad idea. Jason cautioned her. The initial amount can be attributed to their stupidity, but not if you did it a second time. She sighed. I know. It would have been fun though. Her phone rang again with the same ominous ringtone as before. Hello, where's Judy? Listen, you foul-mouthed little brat. I am a baroness the same as those idiots. It is your job to listen to both sides of the story before making any judgments. So no, I will not be giving them the territory back, because you have not asked me why I did this in the first place. Secondly, Judy never introduced you as my handler on the council, which you should know means I am under no obligation to listen to you or do as you say. She hung up a second time. You don't have to listen to him because you weren't introduced. Penny was confused. Only your specific council member is allowed to contact you in this fashion. It creates a chain of command. Without it, literally, anyone on the council would be able to order me about. However, Judy never introduced her replacement, so I can't be sure he is legitimate. Eleanor cackled happily. It always pays to read the fine print for these sorts of things. What now then? Jack asked. Now I imagine they'll start investigating the real events and maybe even reach out to John and me, Chantal informed him. What are you going to do about Oberon now? If Judy is gone, that means your main contact inside the council is as well. Jason held his wife tight as she thought through their options. What about John's parents? Can you talk to them? You said they were good people. I did. She agreed slowly. John. I can certainly ask, he cut off as he reached into his pocket and retrieved a vibrating cell phone. I think they know something happened. It's my parents. He hit the answer button. Mom, Dad? You're on speaker. John dear, the dulcet sweet tones of an older woman came through the phone's small speaker. I'm here with your father and the rest of the council. You told me the other day that Eleanor Rage had agreed to let you move into her domain. Is that correct? He waved away Eleanor's raised brows. Yes, that's correct. Why? Chantal leaned over to whisper. We only told them after we got your actual permission. It seems that all of the barons surrounding her domain are accusing her of stealing land from their territories all at once. There was noise in the background as one of the council members spoke up. All of them? Eleanor shook her head and held up 3 fingers. John shrugged. That must be very embarrassing for them. After all, she just demonstrated that none of them were able to sufficiently guard and protect their lands. And if she did it to them all at the same time, then they have either been slacking, or she is far more powerful than them. Either way, I think the question you should be asking is why she would go and do something like that. Oh, we intend to. However, would you mind going over and asking her yourself? Mother, you know things between me and Eleanor are rocky right now. Frankly, I'm surprised she agreed to let us move here at all. Besides, I can't speak to her about council business, you know that. Just have the woman in charge of her call her. What was her name? Janeth or Jabba or something? I swear it was J something. John was clearly having fun with the conversation. We can't. She is no longer a member of the council, and she left without passing on her responsibilities. Sounds like some of the newer members goofed when they forced everyone out so quickly. Knowing her, I doubt she would be willing to accept their excuses either. They really should have followed proper procedure when they tried taking over the council. Sensing that he had pushed as far as he could, John quickly wrapped things up. Well, I'll reach out to her when I can, but no promises. Call me again tomorrow sometime so we can catch up, Mom. It's been a while since we talked. Anyway, I'll talk to you later. Bye. He hung up and placed the phone onto the table. Well, that should give us a couple more days, at least to figure things out. I can use that time to get some things done. Starting with finishing up my domain properly. Then getting that house torn down in Bennett for the runes, and going through all the information we brought back from the warehouse. Eleanor looked stressed at the thought of how much she had to do in such a short amount of time. What about telling them that Oberon is back? Kaitlyn inquired, as everyone began standing, apparently agreeing that dinner was over. Don't we need to tell them as soon as possible? We do, but we can't just tell the wrong people. That would be a bad move, I think, Eleanor replied with a shake of her head. No, we have to wait until, at least tomorrow when your grandmother calls again, or even later. She's right, honey, Chantel agreed. If we had just told the council tonight, they wouldn't have listened. They were focused on the territory dispute, and they would have thought she was trying to distract them. Nothing more. But that's insane. It's their job to listen to what their barons have to say. Kaitlyn finished losing steam. In theory, yes, and if it had been anyone else, I'm sure that would have been the case, Eleanor assured her with a tired smile. Except certain people on the council don't like me. Remember? That is so messed up. That's not how it's supposed to work. Maybe not, but it's what we have. This is politics. It's an ugly business for everyone involved. John rumbled in his deep voice while straightening his jacket. Jack held the door open for everyone as they walked outside and into the approaching darkness. Kaitlyn and Penny stepped to the side as their parents huddled together by the car doors. Jack joined the girls a moment later, staying away from his sister. Even during dinner, her hair had begun to edge towards a darker red than before. You going to be here in the morning? He asked Kaitlyn. She looked confused for a moment, before realization set in. Right, tomorrow is Monday. I guess that means we have school. She chuckled and nodded her head. Yeah, I'll be here. So much has happened. I completely forgot about it. I understand. After what happened, it will be hard to simply go back to class like nothing has changed. You know we're going to have to increase our training sessions starting tomorrow, right? Kaitlyn asked while bunching Penny's hair into different shapes on the side of her head. If the council shows up, then our bond needs to be almost complete. Yeah, I know. I just don't like the idea of this turning into some kind of transaction, and nothing more. He stifled a snicker as the girl began weaving static electricity into the mix to keep the red hair upright. Penny glared at her brother. Why are you laughing? What's she doing? Jack took a picture and tossed the phone to his sister, who laughed. Ooh, give me horns, arg. Now make me a bloody unicorn, please. Penny was at just the right age to enjoy having someone do silly things with her hair, instead of getting embarrassed. The parents had finished up their discussion by then, and were enjoying watching the kids. Finally, John looked at the darkening sky and then at his watch. Come on, Kaitlyn, we need to be getting home. It would still be some time again before Eleanor's domain could be considered safe, even with the new spells in place. Some things simply took time. There was a reason she took matters into her own hands when she had first moved here with Jason years before. Kaitlyn retracted all the static electricity from the younger girl's hair. "I'll see you both tomorrow then." Everyone waved and then went back inside the house as the other family left. A feeling of weariness settled over them. Only Penny and Jack had any energy to spare, while their parents had reached the end of their respective ropes. "Why don't the two of you go to bed now? Penny and I can clean up and do the dishes. We'll talk more about what needs to happen next in the morning," Jack offered, locking the new front door behind them. Jason and Eleanor hesitated and then nodded. "Fine, but we do need to talk and decide on some things as a family tomorrow. This business with the council affects us all, and that's without them learning about either of you. If that happens, then all bets are off, especially if Oberon really does have a mole in the council." Eleanor continued where her husband stopped. "I'm sorry, kids, I know you didn't ask for any of this." Penny ran over and hugged both of them. "No, we didn't," Jack began. "But I think this is better than not knowing things like the Nightwalkers are out there. Besides, it's not your fault either. You tried to keep us out of this." He hugged them both tightly as well and then stepped back. "Now, go get some sleep and start thinking about what we're going to do next. We'll clean up this mess and make sure everything is locked up before going to bed." They said their goodnights and tiredly shuffled off to bed, leaving Jack and Penny alone. "Do you really think everything is going to turn out okay?" Penny asked him, as he began spraying off the dishes before putting them in the dishwasher. "I hope so," he gave a small shake of his head. "However, it's hard to say for sure. I know nothing about the council and how they work. Mom and Dad and the others do though, and they seem to think we'll be fine." That was enough to mollify her for the moment. He wasn't sure if he believed it himself, but it was a nice hope regardless. Together, they made sure everything was put away before starting the dishwasher. Then they went around and made sure all the doors were locked. Jack risked a quick kiss against the top of Penelope's head outside her room as they separated. "Night, sis." She gave him a quick hug and then ran into her room. As Jack hurried to his room through the dark hallway, he swore he could see the shadows creeping closer. It was the first time he could remember being scared in his own house, and he didn't like it. Sleep was a long time coming that night.